Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran. Today, we're fortunate enough to be joined by two officials who work deep in high school, college as well. They're going to discuss their careers, what they look for on the field of chief officials. First, before we start doing that, let's get into last week's play of the week. So just to recap, we had A's ball, second, 7, B34, A28 left side, B7 tackles A28 at B30. Ball comes loose, B34 clearly recovers the ball. High school, L rules that A28 was down before the ball came. The umpire and the back judge have a conference with the line judge and the referee, and insist the ball come out before A28 touched the ground. Ball out of high school. So now in college, ruling on the field by L is that A28 was down before the ball came. This replay gets the ball. The video clearly shows the ball was loose before A28 touched the ground. It shows the clear recovery by the defense. At 3:30 remaining in the court. What's that result? So these got a little tricky. And without replay in high school, the crew's going to have to make a big decision. If L accepts the additional view from point U and B and is willing to change the ruling, have to work with when did the whistle sound? Did a whistle blow before B recovered? If not, B's ball, first and 10, 25-second clock after change of possession, game clock starting on the snap. The whistle did blow first, inadvertent whistle, and we have to replay the down. College is somewhat similar without a replay. However, in this case, we have replay. The officials should let the play out before sounding. Replay can review L's ruling. The recovery, it will be B's ball first and 10. And since the first quarter, the game clock's not.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. The high school part, I mean, it all depends upon what the decision is that the crew reaches, right? And I think on our crew, if this is you or me making the call, there's a level of trust on these crews. And so if you came to me, if Drew or Daniel came to me with information that they had it clearly and that I might have been straight lined or may not have seen it fully, I need to be humble enough to accept that, so that I'm okay changing that ruling. But if I have a clear view and I've made that ruling, chances are I'm going to stick with it. And I think that's same for you as well, Michael. I mean, if you've got clear eyes on the play and you see it and you make that ruling, if you and B come in and they have some other information, if you're confident in that, chances are you're going to stick with that.
I actually had a play very similar that happened to me, and I think it was a long pass or something along those lines. Defender and offensive player, they met. Everybody's starting to go to the ground. I thought I saw a knee down. I'm kind of running down the sideline, kill it, and our back judge came over and says, "Nah, he just took the ball right out of his arms." And they both kind of simultaneously fell to the ground. I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Then we'll give B possession and we'll go." Everything was so bang bang. There wasn't a lot of hoopla by either coaches or crowd because everything happened right at the same time. The discussion was a good discussion to have, and we got the right rule. So we got it.
Yeah, I mean, with 5 officials, we've talked many times, there's limitations. And so you're doing the best you can with the information you have. There's no replay. At the level that Michael and I work in D3, we don't have replay. So this play is going to be much the same. Now, the difference is there's 7 officials on the field. So you may have some people with more views, but maybe not. It all just depends on how the play plays out. Part of being an official is being confident in your calls. Part of it's being humble enough that when somebody has better information to you, a more complete picture to accept that. But this is a tricky play. I can't tell you necessarily, this will always be ruled this way. This one's very situation specific, but typically you're going to have to decide, are you going with what you and B bring into L here, or is L sticking with the call? If you are overturning it and going with U and B, then that's, as Michael said, we're going to have to think about inadvertent whistle procedures, if the whistle was sounded, when that was sounded. So this one can be pretty complex. Hopefully you won't have to deal with it, but these do come up and you've got to be ready to deal with it when you face it. As Michael said, we're joined by 2 very experienced deep officials today, Michael O'Connor and Drew Frawley. Michael is a longtime high school official here in Indiana, as well as a longtime college official working in the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Conference. Drew's also worked high school in Indiana, is currently a college back judge in the GLVC.
last several episodes, thought some perspective deep out of Connor's been a good friend of the opposite Saturday. Work was official. Gentlemen, we're happy to have anything else that I've forgotten.
No, like Michael said, we appreciate you joining us. This will give us a chance to have an episode where we sort of look at the perspective of deep officials, whether it's high school or college. So we appreciate you joining us with all the experience that both of you have. Michael O'Connor's been instrumental, as Michael said, to both of us coming up into college. And I had a chance to work a game with Drew last year where I learned a ton from him and some other guys on his crew. So two people I'm really indebted to for experience that I've gained over time. And now I'll give you a chance. And anything you want to add about your backgrounds there, starting with you, Michael?
Well, I will say that I've been in officiating football ever since I got out of high school. This will be my 45th year coming up in high school. And I'll be in college now, somewhere 10 or 11 years, maybe 12, including my applicant process. So, and I've been done just about everything on high school crew and worked several positions. I've also worked a short wing in college, a game or two to fill in. But I'm a deep official. I'm a back judge in high school, and I'm a side judge in college, and I enjoy sitting back there in the rocking chair, as most people call it.
Yeah, I just add for myself. This is year 10 for me. I'm sitting as OCs talking about years. I think it's year 5 in college. I'm pretty sure, including the applicant year. And then to brag on OC as well, OC was very instrumental in my growth as well. I was on his college crew, I should say. And so he was greatly beneficial for me to learn and grow. And then it grieves my heart to be able to have to step away from that. But he is a great, great official that I'm privileged to get to learn more from tonight. So I'm happy to be here, and thankful for you fellows for inviting me.
Well, again, we appreciate you both joining us. And like we said, we're going to go through some discussion of both your experience and tips that you might have for working back judge, whether at high school or college with you, Drew, and deep wings. And this will bring in both of the Michaels this week. We've got the 3 deep for college covered here, so you should be in good hands here. One of the things that we talked about on an earlier episode with Steve Martin was the importance of pre-snap routines, right? Between every play, you go through the same checklist. You learn it so that it just becomes second nature as we're going through this. And with Steve, he covered some back judge deep pre-snap routines. But I want to ask you guys, since these are the positions that you work, starting with Michael, let's start. I know you work back judge in high school. Can you just sort of talk through at the high school level, 5-man mechanics, what your pre-snap routine is there?
My pre-snap in high school, probably different because everybody's is different, but mine's probably a lot different from most people. One of the first things I'm looking at is down the distance after the play, because that kind of dictates a few things, whether I need to step up my pace or not, or whether we're going to just a second down, third down, or whatever. Then I'm looking at clock status, and then I'm looking at the play clock status, and I'm checking for subs. And last thing I do is I'm looking at the offensive formation, as they're either coming out of the huddle or if they're running kind of a no huddle. I'm having to run through this all in my head fairly quickly. But in high school, the back judge is pretty much in a deep pile of doo-doo all the time because he has a lot of responsibilities compared to college, since in college he's got 2 other people to help him on everything else. But in high school, pretty much I'm on my own.
Right. And how does it differ? I know at the college level, as you said, as opposed to working as back judge, you're a deep wing, you and Michael. So I suspect you may have different pre-snap routines, but at the college level, how does your pre-snap routine change, if at all?
It changes to really doesn't change a lot, even though technically I'm not really responsible for the play clock because the back judge is, but everybody is either everybody says, well, you're not really responsible, but really everybody's responsible for the clock status and basically for the play clock, because it's just that you need more than one person looking. And if we expect, oh, I know that Mike across the other side of the field, I know he's going to be looking there too, and he's going, well, I know Mike across the field's going to be looking, and so I'm not really needing to worry about it. So everybody has to worry about it that way. We don't get to that caught in a situation where we only have one person looking at it and they miss it. But beyond that, it's pretty much about the rest. It's pretty much about the same. Okay. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I went to a clinic and I stole from a now NFL guy the 3 C's of his pre-snap routine. Now I use them as well. Clear, clock, count. So the 3 C's. So clear, I'm clearing the play, making sure everything's cleaned up. Incomplete pass, making sure the ball is getting back to the line. Not doing it in a hurry, but taking my time, but doing it swiftly, if that makes sense. Counting my players. Check that. That was clock before that. So clear, clock. Like OC said, I have the play clock, but he makes a great point that even though that's my primary, it all should be everybody's secondary. We all should be making sure that the clock started. And then I always take a peek at the play clock as well, even though that's not my primary. Especially if I'm under 2 minutes. One of the things we've done on our college crew is we say something pretty frequently, almost every play, or at least when it hits that 2 or 1 minute, what new rules or emphasis is kicked in. And so that is a reminder for us. And so I'm always trying to remember that under those certain spectrums of the clock. And then count. I'm checking off with my deep wings to make sure we have 11. If not, what do we need to do to get it corrected? And if we can't get it corrected, we'll notify each other through hand signals as well as through O2Os that a foul is going to occur, and then we each lay down a foul. We lay down some laundry for it.
Okay. You mentioned, calling a foul, or I guess laying down a foul. I guess we'll flip this time, starting with Drew. Can you walk us through how you report a foul or what you're doing in those situations where somebody else on the field is reporting a foul? What are you looking at? What are you noting, if anything? How does that process work for you?
So once again, I steal the wisdom that I've been given from others. And so I think it was one of my original college white hats told me that I want you to tell me how I'm going to report it over the mic. This is how I want you to report it to me, like I'm just going to say it right over the mic. And so I'll go in. First of all, I'm trying to get better at giving preliminary signals. That's something that I've had to get better at. And then I go in. I have defensive pass interference, number 14, 15-yard penalty from the spot of the foul. We're going to play first down. So I think it's important, the 2 that I may not include, but that I need to somehow relay or that I need to know in the back of my mind is the clock status as well as the result of the play. So if we have a defensive pass interference, number 14, 15-yard penalty from the spot of the foul, we're going to play first down. It was an incomplete pass, and clock is going to start on the ready, so to speak. That's just me saying it. So it would start on the snap. But it's just knowing what it is and the clock status is important for exactly what we do as deep wings to know we have the clock.
And Michael, how's that? How do you report a foul? And what are you doing when, let's say that Michael's thrown his 5th straight defensive pass interference or something on the other side of the field from you? Or I guess maybe he only does that in high school, huh? But what's your process?
You might be right. Um, it's pretty much the same as what Drew said. That's what I've learned, especially from the people above me when I came in. But the one thing I do want to point out is something that Drew said twice. It's not 15 yards from the spot of the foul. It's 15 yards from the previous spot. If Mike's throwing a flag from over on the other side, all I'm doing is I'm looking around the field. I'm still staying on the sideline and I'm looking around and I'm making sure that nothing's going to happen, especially behind him or anything if he's going to report a foul. I'm just kind of an observer at that point because I don't need to be involved. Now, say my short wing throws a foul, I'll go up and I will cover his flag for him so he can go in and report so nobody does anything to his flag. Nobody tries to pick it up, tries to move it, especially if it's a spot foul. We don't want anybody touching it. So that's what I'll do. And by some chance, if somebody throws a flag on my key, I will go to them and before I let them get to the white hat, and I will have a conversation with them on what they saw, just to see if they saw something different than what I did. And beyond that, like I said, Drew covered the information you're giving your white hat.
Ryan, I did want to add that not correcting OC because I would never do that. But anyway, what I was saying was I think one of the things that I've found helpful, at least for me, I only worked 1 year as a deep wing and then worked the rest at the hardest part of the deep three, if you know what I'm saying. But was
spicy.
Was recording the officials' fouls that are in front of me. And so I recorded the umpires and the referees' flags just to make it easier on them. They have a lot more going through their mind than what I do. And so that's been something that's been helpful for them.
And I guess since we're making this a deep wing episode, Michael Moran, any other things that you add in your process or that you're looking for out there if you throw it or somebody else throws it?
I would echo the same comments I've seen. I think especially on the sideline, you got another official on the flag down. Even as a deep wing, if Drew's my back judge, he throws a flag, I might come in. I don't want to abandon too many of my other duties on the sideline, but I might have the ability to come in and kind of cover the flag, spot off for a guy or a hold. But I'm not too quick to abandon the sideline because players back, coaches back. I talk to a coach, input on things. And kind of speaking of that, I know when you're kind of in the middle of the field, Drew, you're not as bothered sometimes by the sidelines. But I know you previously were at a little line of scrimmage in high school. Is that right? So maybe translating that to either deep wing, back judge. What kind of interaction are you guys having with players or coaches during? Maybe not so much coaches, but if there's something you have there with a coach, our audience would love to know, specifically players, what kind of rapport are you building with them during the game?
For me, I work basketball also, and so it's been very helpful for me to build rapport with coaches. I would hope I would say it becomes easy for me. But one of the things that I've heard those that have more experience and have more wisdom than I do say is that silence can't be quoted. And so tell the facts. Like, I'm going to answer questions, coach. We're not going to engage in a long dialogue, but what do you have for me? What question can I help with? If it's a foul, coach, here's what we have. If they want to start arguing, it's, hey, I need what you got, and then move on. But be respectful, but silence can't be quoted. That's one of the best comments I've heard. So
that's a great point, Drew. I've heard that before too. Silence can't be quoted, and it's always important to answer the direct questions and not get into what if, what about us, and all that. So, O'Connor, you and I kind of get the best of both worlds of both players in the field and coaches on the sideline when we're deep. What are you kind of doing either before the game, maybe with coaches trying to build rapport, even during the game with players? What are you kind of doing when you handle such a situation?
Before the game and even during the game, you do build that rapport with the coach, and being around for as long as I've been in the Heartland now, I'm pretty comfortable with most of the coaches and knowing them, and being able to hold a conversation with them, whether we would meet somewhere on the street or not. So, I respect them, and I think they respect me. And I'll let a coach say what he wants to say, as long as he doesn't get really personal with me or with one of the other officials. I'll let him have his say, but we always try to keep them off the field the best we can, because a lot of times, they like to walk out there, and it's just like, okay, coach, come on, let's go back to the sidelines. Tell me what you want to say. Kind of just talk to him and let him rant and rave. And because I'll tell you, I've had that where early on in my career, that a coach for a quarter and a half has walked up and down the sideline with me, questioning my early call in the game with his whiteboard. Have saying, hey, look at my receiver. They're doing this. How can he be called for interference in that? So, it happens. But, these days, I bet you that coach has forgotten what he did years ago. And we have a great rapport now. So, you just, what Drew said is correct. Silence can't be misquoted. But, when you talk to a coach, you don't give long dissertations. You just try to give short answers to give him the best answer you can give him. And if you have to get further information, say, Coach, I'll get the information for you. I'll get back to you. Most of the time, a couple plays later, they've forgotten all about it. So,
what about
and with players, with players, especially being a deep wing, the defensive backs, they're a little charged sometimes, and it's like, hey, just talk to them. Hey, I saw what you did. Just tell them, ball comes this way. You're not going to be so lucky, because I'm going to have to drop some laundry on you. So, just let them know you're there, and they'll respect you.
All right, so we've talked so far about some of the things that you do on the field and about your experience as well, but perhaps it'd be useful for some of the people who listen and, for all of us to understand each other. And I'll start with you on this one, OC. How did you get into college officiating?
Well, I had gotten into college officiating. I was at a high school meeting, and the whoever was running it that night said that the director of officials, and I can't remember Larry's last name right now, was looking for applicants to get into college officiating, and gave us the information. And I contacted him, and he sent me information on when they were going to have something, and that was it. I showed up to a meeting for them, and 12 years now later, this is where I'm at.
Okay. And Drew, I know you've gotten into it a little bit more recently, but how did that process work for you?
Yeah. So I started high school, like I mentioned, 10 years ago. And I kind of had always desired to do college, but I knew that in time that would happen. Just didn't want to rush the moment. And so for about 3 or 4 years, I worked underclass varsity football. And then I got to think, he was our football chair at the time in our local association, actually the president as well. Both were college officials. One still works in the Heartland. And I just had been talking to them, hey, I have an interest in this. What do you think about it? They both supported it. One of the gentlemen got me hooked up with, I believe it was Les Anderson at the time. So one of the referees in the Heartland, longtime referee, doing some JV stuff. And then through Les, I got hooked up with the crew through Mark Bald. So actually just getting to know people, making connections, and then waiting my turn in line was how I got started.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. And like I said, you've both had positive impacts on both Michael and myself. So again, we'll say this again, but we certainly appreciate you joining us tonight and being part of this. With that overview out of the way, I wanted to get into sort of the nuts and bolts of the deep position. I don't know the right way to say it, but you guys make some big calls during the games. Not that short wings or umpires or referees aren't making big calls, but those long pass plays when a flag comes out or there's some contact and people are looking around. You guys have a lot to process in a short amount of time. So whether it's DPI, OPI, and it may well be different for both, just kind of want to go through the process, sort of overview at this top. What are you looking for if you see two players coming at you, getting, some hand fighting, some other stuff going for? Are you focusing on one more than the other? What's your starting point? What are you looking for when that pass is coming your way or coming towards your key? I guess I can start with you, OC, on this one.
I'm watching the guys. More often than not, you're going to see them chicken fighting with their hands all day long, and most of the time when they chicken fight, that's what they do, and they really don't take advantage of the other person. But you get a little push here, a little tug there, and they're both doing it, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to be calling offensive and defensive pass interference every other play like Moran would, but so there's a lot I
Why
let
do we
go.
bring these two on? I want to jump in though. You had a great play. I think it was this season. I believe you had OPI and DPI on the same two players. Do you want to walk us through that play?
Yeah. I was watching both the players, and as they came out, the defensive player did get a little handsy and grabbed him and held him, and then as he got released and they took off running, all of a sudden there goes the offensive player. He pushes off to create some separation from the defensive guy. So it's like, okay, you see that maybe once in a year, if that, maybe every couple years, but it's just something you have to look for. And sometimes I'm sure guys, okay, I've got one interference already, and then okay, the play's just going to play out. And sometimes people may miss it because they're not paying attention. But as everybody's been taught, you got to finish the play. You can't stop short of finishing the play, otherwise you will miss something. So, okay. And my big trouble that play was I kept reaching for my back flag, and it was tucked in my back pocket, and it's like, where's it at? Where's it at? Okay, there it is.
I remember I was backing up, and out of the corner of my eye, I kind of saw one flag go, and then the ball went that way. And I see a second flag come out from you, and I thought, didn't he already throw one? I hear you go report it over the radio, and get OPI, DPI on the same two guys.
Well, on that one, Moran, you tried to put that in your bag of tricks for future calls, right?
Yeah, I'll store that one for later. Drew, what are you looking for? I think O'Connor mentioned chicken fighting. I think he said gaining an advantage. What are you looking for when you're talking about gaining an advantage? A phrase.
Yeah, one of the things the phrase that I actually look for is visible material restriction. And so I've thrown two flags on one play. I haven't thrown two flags on the players that are going at each other. And so I think the reason I say that is because what I mean by visible material restriction is it may not be a grab. It may be an arm bar. It may be playing through the back. Does the player visibly restrict a player's movement? So it may be a hook and turn. It may be a hold. But it may just be where a defender is keeping a player restricting an offensive receiver from moving. And so I'm constantly on a pass play, visible material restriction. What's restricted? Is a player being restricted? And another thing, too, is we know that it's the offensive onus that they have to avoid the contact, so that the offensive pick downfield. And so having that radar of having some football IQ to know when they're passing each other, we got to know where that receiver is, if he's creating space, if he's picking. So visible material restriction can go both ways too.
That's a great way you put that too, that the onus being on the offense, right? They know the play, they know the design. Would you say that you might watch a little tighter?
Especially on crossing patterns, yes, I would definitely agree with that. I had a couple of those this season that, and I saw a game film, this too, one of our meetings where an offensive receiver picks the guy, and the receiver didn't get it because the angle that he had. But we got to remember that a pick play is a design play, and that the offense is the one that has to avoid contact. So, Michael, you're probably right. Your radar peaks on those crossing patterns.
The next aspect of this, the term that we often talk about, whether it's...
And let me get...
sorry, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to echo what Drew and Mike said about crossing patterns, those are probably the hardest to keep track of and to actually pick up. But I know one of our games this year, Mike, I think you remember at Rose, I had the same guy twice on
Yes.
OPI.
You've had some magical calls of dinging people twice. It's been pretty impressive.
Whether we're talking about DPI, OPI, or really any other foul, we're always looking for an advantage gained. So I'm typically on the line of scrimmage, and sometimes I stumble my way into a DPI call if it's in front of my face, but for the most part, that's not a foul that I'm throwing very much. So for you guys who see this more and are just reading passes more than me or somebody in my position might normally, what does an advantage gained mean to you in that moment where you see that chicken fighting, you see those guys going at it? When does it go from chicken fighting to an advantage gained for you?
For me, the phrase advantage gained, when I think of that, I think of the phrase that I often hear is, does it take a step away? So especially with DPI, is a step taken away by the hook and turn, by the hold, is a step taken away by the push out or the arm bar. Two, I think it's also important with DPI off or defensive hold, we got to realize that an advantage is taken away. And when that foul occurs, what advantage is it? And so the new feedback coming from the top is it no longer matters if the quarterback is looking the direction of your key for a hold. It is now if the quarterback still has the football and the throwing posture, it's a foul. Now, if the quarterback is in the posture of throwing, if the ball is away, we let that hold go because an advantage wasn't gained. The ball's already gone. And so we got to know where's the quarterback, what's he doing, she doing, as well as is a step taken away for that defensive DPI defensive hold. OC?
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Coming down, I still have a little bit of an issue with if that quarterback is looking over at Mike's side the entire time, and I've got the receiver and defensive guy all the way over on my side, and the defensive guy's holding them, and there's no way that receiver was going that way. I still have a hard time with that. I really do. That's I think a hard one for us to make a decision on. I know they say you need to call it, but because it really doesn't affect the play. That's just my opinion right now.
It's that offensive hold on the backside of the line on a run that goes out, out to the end. What advantage is that? Yeah.
Great. We've talked a lot about keys. We dropped that term quite a bit, and I know our early episodes we covered the 5-man mechanics in high school. And so for some of our newer listeners, you guys mind defining what your keys are on a college level? Connor, I know you and I have the same key most of the time. You want to tell our listeners what that is?
One guy.
In college, the deep wing, the college has the widest guy on the line of scrimmage, which at some point can be the tight end.
Can be the tight end. Sometimes you gotta react.
It can be the tight end, and at which point you can adjust yourself as up to being only 18 yards from the line of scrimmage to get a better view of the tight end, because if somebody's going to hold and the tight end does, you get a better view at 18 yards than you do at 20 to 24.
And Drew, when you're in the middle there, what's the back that's doing a little different compared to high school?
So for us in the backfield, defensive backfield in college, really we're focusing on the number 2 and the number 3 receiver. So it depends what formation that they're in. So if we're double wide, strong side, I'm going to go number 2. If they're balanced, we're going to go to the line judge's side and have the number 2 key. So a change this past year was what used to be trips. You went with that number 3 receiver. Now, when that number 3 is pegged, such as a tight end, you're going to take number 2, and then your short wing will take number 3 for, let's say, if they're going to run. No matter what, I'm going to take number 2. So that was a change this year just based on guidance and wisdom, I guess. I don't know.
And I'll interject briefly for our newer listeners. The terms 1, 2, and 3, we're counting from the outside in. So you may say to yourself, hey, I thought there could be 5 receivers. There could be 5, and there would be 3 on one side and 2 on the other. You could have 4 in one, I suppose. But what Drew and Michael are talking about, you're starting on the outside, that's number 1. The next eligible receiver is 2, 3, so on and so forth. Get back. Clarification. That's great to know about the new mechanic there, Drew, with the tight end. That's fresh.
I learned that in the locker room before the game. I worked with Drew, and my head was swimming. But boy, once you get out there and you see it for a play or two, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. It takes a moment to actually get out and see it for it to actually go to practice. But you can, once you sense it, it just makes more sense for that switch to occur, and everything's going to be covered much better than the traditional way there. So that's probably going to spread and continue to spread throughout various levels as we go forward. Hopefully, anyway, from my perspective, because it just made a ton of sense. We've been talking a lot, I guess, about pass plays, and certainly the deep wings. You're very involved there. Does your approach change, and what do you do to keep yourself engaged? Perhaps if you're working a game with a team that's going to run, 2 plays out of 3, or a big, triple option type of team where you're not getting those passes your way, but you got to be ready when they do come. How are you keeping yourself engaged in that situation, Drew?
We talked earlier about a routine, and I think it's sticking to that routine. And so every time I know it's hard when it's 70-0 and the team, all they do is run. But even as deep, it's clear clock count. Whatever you do for a routine, stay with it every single play. One of the things that I try to do is every play, no matter if it's run or pass, I take a step back. So I'm in an athletic stance, take a step back. And so if I do have a receiver that darts down for some reason, I'm already in my back pedal. And so every single play I'm doing the exact same way. I'm starting the same exact way. And I'm keying on that tackle to know if it is a run or a pass is what I do.
Okay. And see what any tricks or tips that you have for staying engaged in those run heavy games?
Well, you get to hone your holding skills a little bit, because I don't know if any of you have ever had Kokomo before. Kokomo runs double tight end, double with a wingback right off the tight end. And all it is 3 yards in a cloud of dust with them just about every play. They may throw in a pass every once in a while, and when they do, you just have to, like Drew said, you got to be ready for it. But you're basically looking up there because they're running off tackle, between the tackle and tight end most of the time, and you're honing your skills, just paying attention to the tight end and that up there, looking for that grab and restrict or a takedown. But you've got to kind of change your mindset. You got to change your mindset and kind of take out the passing and just move more towards the run.
We've talked a lot about passing and DPI and OPI. Why don't we switch gears? The other part, I guess, one of the other aspects of the game where my eyes would get big if I did the things that you guys do out there would be scrimmage kicks, because you're having to make those decisions on those first couple of contacts and KCI and all of that, muffs on punts. There's a lot going on back there. So I guess for all 3 of you, really, since we've got, again, the whole back line covered here, can you sort of go through your positioning on scrimmage kicks, and once you're positioned, what are you looking for in terms of legal or illegal contact coming your way? I don't know who to start with. I start with you, OC.
Let's start with Drew, because I think that because he's going to have the returner. So I think starting with him and then let Mike and I build off of that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Very wise, OC. I like it. So what I often do is, so I have, like OC said, is I have the returner. And so if it's double, which I've had this year or had last year, I'm splitting the difference, usually 5 to 7 yards back. It gives me enough distance to make a choice to which way the ball is going. If it's a single, I'm 2 yards wide off the shoulder and 5 to 7 yards deep. I'm usually more towards the 7 by manual, and so that gives me enough time to react. If it's in the middle, I go to the line judge's side. If it's pretty to one way, it's usually line judge. If not, I'm the wide side.
That's a good point, sir. So now that you've got your positioning, I know OC and I kind of line ourselves up with you, and Connor's obviously got much more experience as a deep league than I do. When I figure out how the whole scrimmage kicks and punts work, I'll let the audience know. I'm still trying to get there. So Connor, pre-kick, what are you looking at?
When Drew takes his initial position, I'll wherever he's at on the field, and we all three should be in a straight line across from each other, unless then we have a little different probably formation depending on where the receiver is. But as Drew said, he's got the receiver. Also, what I've noticed over is coming down the middle of the field, beats the gunners there, watching still from the outside besides our gunners. We've got to pick up whoever's coming down the middle of the field.
It sounded like you're talking about, we're looking for that first initial contact, that first wave. Once the ball's kicked, we're looking for whoever's kind of breaking free and who might pose the biggest threat to the returner.
The biggest threat is coming from the center, and usually that's the biggest threat that I see anymore. It's usually the center because the center's usually free because they're not going to hit him.
Yeah, that's a great point with the rule changes they had this year. Well, not just this year, but over the last couple of years, giving that snapper protection and making sure he's safe. They are getting a free release now, and a lot of times those snappers, they're linebackers. they're able to get the ball, they're able to move, and they're getting down the field in a hurry. It's not the 80s anymore with the backup center, right? So that's one thing that always draws our attention.
Drew, one of the big calls that you have to make as a back judge, and I know any of you could make it, but it often, me speaking as an ignorant short wing, but KCI would typically come from the back judge, right? When you're out there, what are you looking for? And part of my thinking on this is the game that we worked last year. We had a play, and I'm not going to identify the teams or the schools or anything, but there was a fair catch called for, and the returner got a little bit buzzed by a guy passing by, but I don't think anybody thought it was a foul except for his coach. And what are you looking for? Where does it go from that incidental contact up to drawing a flag?
Yeah, so I think it's important to note the buzz by. So we all know the big, showcase ESPN hit where the guy's clock gets claimed. We understand that's KCI. It used to be that 1 yard halo around the person. It is now what they say kind of a 10-2, 9-3 in front. But there still is that area where if someone gets buzzed on the side, it's still going to be a foul. And so, so there's that. So the buzz by, like what Ryan is talking about, and in that game, the important part is that the returner's path was altered. And so it impeded his progress to catch a ball cleanly. And it took an ever so slight step away. And so in the moment, I thought, well, I don't think that was KCI. Well, when I went back with a grader and we looked at it, he was right. It did take that slight step away. It affected his ability to catch the ball cleanly. And so that's the phrase that we got to keep in mind is, can the receiver catch the ball cleanly? And if it's not clean, who impeded it? Was it a teammate or was it a defender? And then we have to go, if this was affected it, it's probably KCI.
Okay. So it's not necessarily that big ESPN blow-up hit that we're thinking of. You could have very incidental contact. If it's affecting the step, that's still KCI. It's 15 either way. Obviously, that situation would be, in theory, much less risk of an injury on that play, which is part of I know the emphasis of KCI and why you're trying to take those big blow-ups out of the game through the flag. For the deep wings, I guess if to the extent that you're seeing KCI, is it more of an incidental type of thing, or are you looking as a back judge like Drew is looking at that returner in the middle of the field? Where are your eyes going once that catch is made? Let's say it's the returner in the middle of the field in front of Drew. Are your eyes going there? Are you looking elsewhere? What's your focus at that point?
I know I've gotten burned in the past. You get curious. That ball's up there for 3.5, 4 seconds, and you're going, "What's going on over there?" And you take a peek, and then you miss a takedown, or you miss a hold, or you miss a foul against the face, something like that. So I've had to train myself to identify my key, see what action's going on there, and maybe if he's hung up in the works, find another threat. I've gotten to the point where I've stopped looking at the returner, and O'Connor can probably attest the same. I don't know, but I would assume that he's the one that taught me, so I assume he does a lot of the same things that I do.
Well, if I see of KCI, it would be because either the gunner or one of the gunners is right there at the. We may not always see it.
Yeah, we may not, and I think to your point, Brian, the question you asked, do we see it? Maybe if it's just something that's absolutely crazy, and maybe the back judge got knocked over, right? We're kind of relying on him because it's just in his field of view and it's his primary responsibility. So I don't go looking for it anymore at all. I've had for the thing. So referee looked at me and said, "That's not your job." I said, "Okay, it's not my job, so I'll keep my attention elsewhere."
Well, I think it's important, if I could say, Ryan and Mike, but I think it's important to, if your gunner does go inside and potentially impedes or causes a KCI, one, you got to know how the KCI occurred. If your gunner was there, you should have an opinion.
Sure.
And if the back judge doesn't have a foul, it would be wise, and I would say probably expected, that a conference would occur. OC said it earlier. If something happens on his key, and if Michael, you throw on OC's key, I'm sure OC wants you to come talk to him. And it's the same thing. If you throw on a KCI for me, Moran, I would expect you to at least come over and talk to me. And I may say, Moran, you're exactly right. Like you're exactly right. The reason I say that is we had a play this year, like Ryan, I won't name teams and games, where I had a deep wing throw for a KCI. Well, he had a bad angle, and he would admit this to this day. He wouldn't feel mad about me calling him out at all. That he had a bad angle, and he didn't see that the offense blocked the defense into the returner, and it was actually the offense that hit the returner. And so when he threw, we got together and I talked him off of it because he threw on my key and we had a conference and we got the play right. And so just to bring that up, it could be helpful to talk no matter what.
Great point.
And that's been a theme for a lot of our episodes, is when you have information, get together on that, or if somebody else throws something that's clearly on your key, then you should get together, because if it's your key and you don't have a flag, hopefully there's a reason for it. But if you're straight lined or something happens, get some information just to reach an informed decision at the end of the process. All right, that's all that I wanted to cover. Anything else, Michael, or anything else that anybody else wanted to cover?
I have a question to ask you three, and see what your answer is. Okay.
Sure.
Have you ever heard when you play golf that you drive for show and you putt for dough?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I don't play golf.
Well, in officiating, the four up front, they officiate for the show because any one of them can throw a flag, and you're not really sure what happens. But when we throw the flag, everybody sees.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, I tried to reach that point earlier. Like when you guys throw flags, it tends to be big stuff, right? When I see a flag coming down the sideline on my side or whatever, it's probably something pretty big. Most of what I'm throwing as a short wing is going to be the 5-yard variety. And they're rarely, I don't think game changing is the right term, but they rarely have the importance that a flag from deep carries. So yeah, I agree with you there, OC. That's why I appreciate the chance to talk with the three of you and speak with a full complement of deep officials tonight, especially ones who have as much experience as you guys do, and or people that I respect as much as all of you. So Michael Moran, thank you for wearing both hats tonight. As host and as an official. But Drew and Michael, we really want to thank you both for your time and for all the insight that you provided here. And again, on a personal note, I know Michael and I are both very appreciative of all the help and kindness you've shown us over the years.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for having me. It's been fun. I'll do it. I would do it again anytime. Anytime, guys.
Well, when you say that, we're going to take you up on that, so you can bank on that.
Thank you both.
For sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you both. All right. Once again, we'd like to thank Michael and Drew for joining us tonight. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us once again for this episode of Learn Your Stripes. As always, we'll leave you with a play to consider.
Okay, the clock shows 0, signaling the end of halftime. That's the halftime intermission. And the home team's marching band is still on the field. How to handle this in high school? How would you handle this in college? Who are you speaking with? Is there a foul in either high school or college? If there's a foul, how are you going to administer it?
That's an awfully tough one, so I'd be interested in everyone's input on that.
Absolutely.
And as with all plays, we'd appreciate you sending us your ruling there, or how you would handle this, at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. As you might expect, we'll discuss that play at the start of our next episode. In addition to letting us know what your ruling would be, if you have any questions for us or feel we made a mistake, again, our email address is learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can find us on your app of choice, or obtain episodes or an RSS link to directly download all episodes into your app of choice at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast, on Instagram at the same name, and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please tell your friends and rate us 5 stars and leave a review on your app of choice. We'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.